You're listening to the Just Sayin podcast, offering conversations with experts that will educate, inform, and entertain. Here's your host of the Just Sayin podcast, Charlie Cornacchio.
The Just Sayin podcast is brought to you by New Leaf Hypnosis Center. At New Leaf, you'll be working with mindset coach and hypnotist Anthony Serino to overcome mental roadblocks holding you back from achieving your goals. Using a science-based and client-centered approach, Anthony will help you design the life you deserve. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Just Sayin podcast. Do you have a story, something that you've accomplished, maybe a family tradition, life-changing moment? Today's guest believes that we all have interesting stories because they are our own stories, and she has tips and ways to bring them out into the written word. And once it's written down and it's out there, it will outlive the rest of us. When I was getting ready to write my book, How I Met My Mother and the Four Brothers I Never Knew I Had, Keryl Pesce was my first call. And Keryl joins us today to talk about her publishing company, Little Pink Press, and the ways that she can help you to get your story to paper, to book, and published for all to learn about. Keryl, thanks so much for coming back on the Just Sayin podcast.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here again, Charlie. And it's so funny because the last time we spoke about my books and me as an author, we kept touching on the writing and the publishing, and we're like, oh, let's make this a whole nother episode and talk about it. So something that I am really passionate about. So very grateful for the opportunity to share what I know and what words of encouragement I can offer people who have a book in them. And I think we all do.
Yeah, well, for those of you who are watching or listening, it was episode 5, I believe, where we talked with Keryl about her story, and very interesting story. What kind of motivated her, inspired her to write her books, Happy Bitch, Hello Beautiful, and what led to that. It's a great, interesting story. So we're not going to really get into that today. We want to talk about publishing, but go back and check that episode out, and you'll understand where Keryl's coming from. And it's a place of positivity and helping other people. That is pretty much her message, is to just help other people. And by doing that, she's making herself feel better. And then she's able to accomplish all the great things that she's accomplished, which one of them is becoming a publisher. So, yeah. You have a wine brand, you have books that are out there, you have speaking engagements, you have a radio show that you're a co-host for, and then you decide, I'm going to be a publisher. Was that something that you just woke up and said, I'm going to be a publisher, or was it something that you kind of thought about and had to research?
I kind of feel like it was the universe kept knocking on my door saying, Keryl, you're supposed to be doing this. Keryl, you're supposed to be doing this. Keryl, you're supposed to be doing this. Because when I put out my first book, even after Happy Bitch first came out, I had so many people, and you were one of them, Charlie, who would come to me and say, oh, I have an idea for a book. I've always wanted to write a book, but I don't know where to begin. I don't know how to get published. And I would just say, go write it. I will help you. We'll figure it out. Don't let that fear of the unknown stop you. Just go write it, because there is no person who has ever lived, is ever living now, or will live in the future who can tell your story. Nobody, Charlie, could have written your book for you. You had to do that. So if somebody is watching or listening right now and feels they have a story in them to tell, whether it's a memoir, whether it's a self-help based on something you've gone through and something you've learned, whether it's advice, whether it is a work of fiction, a creative work, that the story that you feel is within you, go write it. You have to do this. Nobody else can do it for you. And what I wanted to do today was to do just that, to encourage people who have a story to tell it. And then also I have tips on how to get yourself organized, tips to keep yourself focused, as well as to help people understand what their options are for publishing, whether it's working with me or not. My job is not to convince people to work with me. My job is to convince people to go write their book.
Let's get into what a publisher does.
Okay, so let me back that up to say, let's talk about what publishing options there are. First and foremost, the world has changed, right? It used to be, if you wanted to get a book published, you had to count on somebody else deciding whether or not your book was worthy. Mm-hmm. And we no longer live in that world, and that's a wonderful thing. But I feel a sense of obligation, anybody that I speak to make sure they fully understand all of their options when it comes to getting published. First option is the traditional method, which is to go to a publishing house, say it's a Penguin or Hay House or Random House, and try to convince them or get them to pick your book up. And when Happy Bitch was in the works, getting close to being finished, I had a friend who was somewhat of a celebrity, I guess, who had a direct connection to a high person at and maybe it was Random House, I'm not even sure. Got me a phone call with one of the top people. Told him about my book. He said, you know what, your idea sounds like it has legs, but you got to go get an agent. I can't even talk to you if you don't have an agent.
Oh, yeah.
So if you want to go that route, your first thing is to get some of your work. You have to have a sample writing done. You have to have a certain amount that they're going to want to look at. You need to research agents in your genre, whether it's a memoir, whether it's a work of fiction, whether it's books for women, whatever it is. Find agents that work in that genre. Reach out to them to pitch them to pick you up, to work with you. Now, I joke, Charlie, that in a future life, I want to come back as a literary agent because they have the world by the balls. Because they probably pick up 1% of what comes across their desk and reject probably 99%. And the fact of the matter is, they don't know. They don't always know. And J.K. Rowling is one of the prime examples of look at how amazing her creative work is, and how many times she was rejected. So the agent has to first agree to pick you up. Now, an agent gets paid on the back end. An agent gets paid when your book sells to a publisher and the book itself is selling. So they don't want to, and I get it, from a business standpoint, they don't want to invest the time and energy in your book unless they're pretty sure it's going to be profitable and saleable to a publisher. Your writing needs to be clean. Your writing needs to be compelling. Your story, whatever it is that you're crafting and creating, needs to be compelling. And for the most part, you got to be famous. You need to have a big following, or what they call a platform. A lot of people that you can post on social media or whatever your avenue is, your mailing list, that they're pretty confident your book is going to sell a lot of books. And I would say probably 99% of people like you and me don't have that, but we have a compelling story to tell. But we don't have that presence that a publisher is going to say, or an agent will say, yeah, I'll pick them up. Okay, so say you get the agent agrees to pick you up. They will then help you pitch to the publishing houses. That process, again, they probably reject 99% of what comes to them. Could take years if they pick you up at all. Mm-hmm. And again, the same criteria, they get paid on the back end. They're not going to invest in you unless they're really sure this book is going to sell a ton. So bottom line, the process takes years. Rejection rate is really high. And you've now entered 2 layers of people who need to get paid besides you. Your agent wants to get paid. Publisher needs to get paid. That's what they do. And you want to get paid. So in the end, should you be successful and it's years down the road before your word gets out there, you're getting pennies per book, most likely. And unless you're very well known with millions of followers, they're also not going to put a big marketing budget behind you. So it's going to be up to you to promote your book. Valid option. For some people, it works. And maybe somebody listening has that multi-million person following, and okay, that works for them. Option number 2, which is the direction that I have gone for myself, is to self-publish. Now, my first book I published through a quasi self-publishing company who let me maintain the rights. After that, I learned about what has now become Kindle Direct Publishing. To me, self-publishing is absolutely the best way to go for somebody who wants to get their book out there. And I'm going to tell you the reasons why. And the best platform to do that used to be CreateSpace. Now it's Kindle Direct Publishing. You can, for virtually no money, get your book published and available in paperback on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com through Kindle Direct Publishing. Almost all books sold are sold online anymore. Very rare that people go into a bookstore, especially now, to look for and purchase a book. So the things you'll need to have, the skills and resources you'll need to have to be able to do that. Now, for people who are resourceful, and everybody I talk to, I tell them the same thing, go check it out. Do your research, because you may very well be able to completely do this on your own. You'll need to be able to design and format your cover, or have someone who knows how to do that for you. You'll need to design and format your interior. And believe it or not, and you do believe it, your interior needs to look clean. It needs to look like all your interior margins for the fold need to be right. The fonts you use, it needs to be cohesive with your cover. That takes a decent amount of time. But if you're somebody who is resourceful and has that skill, you can do that yourself, and then set up an account and upload that. Secure your ISBN. Also get your book in ebook format. You can also do that through Kindle Direct Publishing. Here's the beauty. If you are done writing your book, it's edited, it's clean, you get it up there, your book can probably be available in a matter of a week or two on Amazon.com. You get paid probably, depending on your book, $3 to $5 in royalties per book. It's print on demand, so you do not need to invest in inventory. Person goes to Amazon, they find my book, Hello Beautiful, they order it, it gets printed and shipped, I get a royalty. Mm. And at the end of every month, that gets direct deposited into my account. And say your book does take off. And I'm actually seeing this with Hello Beautiful, even more so than Happy Bitch, that by word of mouth, I'm watching my royalties. Girlfriends are telling girlfriends about it. By word of mouth, it's growing, growing, growing. And I have a friend who self-published a number of books and had a publisher come to her. So here, you get your book out there. You get it out quickly. You get it out on your own terms. You're making a lot of money per book compared to if you went to a traditional publisher. But there's nothing stopping a publisher from approaching you and wanting to buy the rights. Now the ball is in your court. So to me, there's no reason not to go that route. So that's option number 2, to completely self-publish, design the format the cover, the interior, secure your ISBN, get your book up. Then comes along the third option, which is what I do with Little Pink Press. I help people self-publish. So for people who want to just write their creative work, and they love that part and they want to get their message out, and maybe they also work full-time, or they're busy, or they're moms, or that they just don't want to get involved in that piece of it, I do that for them. So I get paid up front to design and format the cover. I get paid to design and format the interior, set up a Kindle Direct Publishing account for people, and then set it up so that they get 100% of the royalties. Mm. So for the people who want to get it out there, want the control, and they maintain 100% of the rights, they get all the royalties, I'm out. And for some people that works out perfectly because they don't want to get involved in that process. But every single person I talk to, I want to make sure they know you can do this on your own. If you are resourceful and confident to do that, go do it. And then there's other people that say, nope, I don't want any part of that. I welcome your help. So that's where I come in.
So a person who, has a good idea of a story or something that happened to them, but like you said, doesn't have the time to write, or doesn't feel, I've never really written anything, but, a post on Facebook, so I'm not really a good writer. How do you help those people?
So what we first talked about, if you have a story to tell it. And I also feel that having writing, quote unquote, skills, or an English major, say that, I never studied English, I can't write. If you can communicate, if you can have a conversation with somebody about what it is you want to talk about, you can write. That's all you're doing, is having a conversation with somebody, and you're capturing it and writing. Anybody can do that. And to me, having mastery of the English language, as I stutter on that, how great is that? Is the least important skill that you need. The most important thing is to have the courage to put yourself out there, to share what it is you need to share, and find a way to do that in your authentic voice. And there were times my editor for my first book would say to me, okay, Keryl, this isn't technically correct. This is a correct how it would write. I'm like, thank you for that input. That's not how I would say it. I'm leaving it.
Mm.
So and there are people who will tell me they'll read excerpts of my work and say, I know you wrote this. I can feel your voice in that. So to find your voice, which is your natural style of communicating, and just capturing that either handwritten or on a computer. Now, what I'd also love, Charlie, because I think this is something that benefits people, is I have some suggestions for for people to organize themselves and how to get themselves to do the writing. Can we go there?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
So,
okay.
yeah, do that.
Okay. So, one of the things that I learned a little bit the hard way, as I think most of the things we learn the hard way, is I would sit down and say, okay, I'm writing a chapter today. I have an open schedule. Today's my day. I'm going to write a chapter. And then I would sit there and I would fight for 3 hours for one paragraph and it wouldn't come. And what I had to learn is that creative process is a beautiful thing. And one of my favorite books on that is Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. Anybody who wants to help keep that channel open to their creativity, absolutely phenomenal. We need to be in the right place to write. We need to understand, and I had to constantly remind myself, what does this person need from me right now? Not let myself get nervous, not be rigid, not be goal driven. There's times I had to just step away, because the energy you put into your writing, your readers will feel. And I had to sometimes, and I didn't like it because I wanted to get it done, to step away. And I also learned that if I set certain rituals for myself to feel good when I was writing, light my favorite candle, make myself a cup of coffee, whatever little now I'm blessed because I have a home office. So I step in there and, okay, now it's time to stay focused. Maybe you don't have that. Do you have a favorite chair, a favorite blanket, a candle, anything that you can do that creates a ritual that communicates to yourself, okay, now it's time. And I would say, love the process of writing your book. Don't make it just about, I got to get it done. Just love being there. Love that whole writing process. Do your best to engage only your right side brain when you're writing. If you write something and then immediately go back and question, say, you know what, there's a better way. Oh, there's a better word. What should I use there? You're going back and forth, left brain, right brain, and it will slow the process. It's inevitable. You can't completely avoid it. But if you recognize that, to just let it be messy, because once you get it out, you can go, and I'm sure you went through this with your book, you can go back and edit, cut and paste, move, delete, whatever, but you have to get it out first. And know that sometimes writing is messy. Sometimes, and this probably happened to you, I would write so fast, it was coming to me so fast, I couldn't even keep up.
Yeah.
And I would pause and go, holy crap, where did that come from? There are moments for that.
Yeah.
So to do your best to go back and engage your left brain afterwards, and let your right brain, and just be courageous. Don't care how, you got to be brave to let it suck first. Honestly, it may. Sometimes it's going to come great. Sometimes it's not going to come out so great, but you got to get it out.
There's a friend of mine who, this is episode 3 of the Just Sayin podcast, if you go back, who had to sue Ace Frehley from Kiss, guitar player from Kiss, for a song that he wrote for Ace, and then Ace used and didn't let him know he was using it.
Wow.
And it was a heartbreaker, because my friend revered Ace Frehley as like his guitar hero growing up, and loved everything about him. And then when he was my friend was a studio musician, they met and collaborated, or sort of collaborated, on a couple of ideas that Ace had. The point I'm making is that I told him after we did the podcast, this is a great book. You should write a book about this experience, because he doesn't hold any animosity, but he explained from his vantage point as a 25-year-old at the time, working with his hero, where he thought it was going to go and how it didn't go. But it's a great story, and I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who have those kinds of stories. Maybe not that one in particular, but it could be a story about your grandmother or your grandfather, or people in your family. Like you said, everybody has an interesting story.
Yeah.
But what I really like what you said was, and this is the advice that I should give my friend, is just start writing.
Yes.
Let it be messy. Just
Yes.
get it down. You know,
Yes.
it's almost like in business, you know, and Keryl and I met through networking, in business networking groups. That's how we first kind of got together. And in networking, you know, in business, you're always brainstorming. You know, there's no bad idea. Let's just write everything down on the board. All right, write that, write that. You're just writing and letting your
Yeah.
brain just get that stuff out there. And like you said, it could be messy, but you're going to funnel down and
Yes.
edit down
Yes.
and get something really, really good. And
Yes.
you help with that process.
Yes. Yeah. But what you just said is the most important part, is to get it out. So many people, like, they stall out of fear of not being good enough, or they don't know whether it's going to get published, or they never write it to begin with. And I keep telling them, we no longer live in a world where somebody else decides whether your book is worthy or not.
That was
Yeah,
excellent point you made. Yeah,
it is.
Point you made, because you know that would be a turnoff. That was a turnoff for me.
Yeah.
When I first thought about writing, I was just like, well, wait a second. When I did the research, first you got to get a literary agent, and then how many agents just deny everything? And then if they say okay, it's going to take, like you had said, years before you actually get the process going, and that's a turnoff for anybody. But you offer an avenue and a door into the process to come out the other side a lot quicker and get your book out there.
It's virtually rejection proof. You know, if your fear is getting rejected, you don't need somebody else to tell you whether it's worthy. And I'm not going to I don't take books on, or authors on, based on whether I think it's going to be saleable or not. You have a story to tell. Your book is worth writing. Mm-hmm. I don't care. I don't, and will it become a massive financial success? Maybe, but I don't think that's the point. I don't think deciding whether or not to write your book based on how much money it's going to bring is the criteria. You have a legacy within you. Tell your story. Something great may come of it. Financially, maybe, but don't let that be your factor. And certainly don't let somebody sitting behind a desk with a stack of files and everything else they're skimming through tell you whether it's worthy or not.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah, right. You're primarily, I think you're just focused on women authors. Why is that?
Well, it's my tagline is books by or for women. Because anything that I've done in my entrepreneurial career has been focused on women. That's just the avenue that I've taken. And my branding, pink, everything's pink. Hence Little Pink Press, Happy Bitch, Hello Beautiful. So I think sometimes we try to be everything to everybody. And I'm actually helping an 89-year-old man right now get his memoir out. I'm doing it for free. He's a father of a friend of mine. I'm not doing it under my imprint. Just doing it to help him because I believe in it. But when you try to be, it's just marketing 101. When you try to be everything to everybody, you're vanilla, you blend in. Mm-hmm. By narrowing my focus to books that are by or for women, I connect. Oh yeah, I'm a woman author. I'm a female. Yes, I have a story to tell. People will identify with that, and that's working for me so far. I mean, anything I have to say, and I know you have male and female listeners. People can learn from what I'm sharing about telling your story and your options for getting published. If you work with me, your book needs to be either you need to be a female writing it, or your book needs to be written for women. But nonetheless, you now know what your options are wherever you stand.
You had a great technique that you used to get yourself writing. And let's share that, where you created the look of your book before you actually wrote your book as your inspiration.
Yeah, they tell you don't judge a book by its cover, but I say your book cover does matter. And for me, I'm very visual when it comes to that. So for Happy Bitch, I had my cover designed before I wrote it. I had the idea, I had it kind of outlined, and my energy and focus went into, I want that cover. I want to love it. I want my cover first. I printed it out and I wrapped it around another book. And I sat that next to me every time I sat down to write. And I would always sit in the same spot to write. And I kept looking at my book saying, it's a done deal. It's a done deal. It's just execution at this point. It's done. And it worked. And then Hello Beautiful, same thing. I had my outline. I knew the premise was about building a better relationship with yourself, with your experiences, finding the courage to show up whole and real and authentic, and that is the most beautiful version of you. I designed the cover, printed that out, wrapped it around another book, sat it there until I finished my book and it was done and it became a reality. It's the law of attraction 101, I guess. And then the same thing happened with Little Pink Press. I had this idea to become a publisher because people kept coming to me over and over and well, maybe this is the universe telling me something that I need to do this. So, of course, I love the color pink. I came up with the name of Little Pink Press. I designed a logo, printed that out, put it up on the wall in my office, and looked at it for months before I did anything. And then I finally put myself out there, and business just started coming to me naturally.
Can you give us a range of what something like that costs? Is there a range?
Sure. I quoted somebody a rough idea, believing their book was around 30,000 words. It ended up being about 50 to 60,000 words, which is a lot more work for me for creating the interior. So it does depend on the number of words your book is. And certainly when I did the children's books that are 24 pages and a few words on each one, it's significantly less than a full-fledged 80,000 word memoir. Mm-hmm. I would say roughly $1,500 to $3,000, depending on the size of your book.
That's it?
Yeah.
Wow.
I know. I don't know what it is. I feel like I have a little bit of a gift for envisioning covers and titles for people. I don't want to sound like, oh, I'm so good at it. I am, but I feel like it's given to me. I feel like I'm the vessel. There are times when it'll come to me and I'm like, I know what your book needs to look like. And there's some people I'll have a conversation with them about the book. They haven't even decided to hire me. And I'll start doing layouts for the book. I'm like, this just came to me. I had to share it with you. So I design the covers. I format them properly. I put my imprint on it, Little Pink Press. It'll go on my website. You maintain 100% of the royalties and control of your book. You can do whatever you want in the future. It's available in paperback and print on demand on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com. Again, did I mention I do the interior, obviously, all of that. And then also I get it formatted for ebook. So it's available to read on Kindle or whatever the app is on an iPad. Mm-hmm. So that all gets out. And then I set up your account on Kindle Direct Publishing, your page that describes your book. I usually help craft the content for the back of the book once I've read it and really digest it and work and get to know the author. And yeah, I think that's it.
Wow. So, I mean, you really can hold somebody's hand through the process and at least get them moving in the right direction. And I think that, well, you tell us if there's one thing that you could say to people who have never thought maybe about being an author, writing a book, or maybe they have, but they just feel like it's out of my league. It's too expensive to self-publish. I'm not a good writer, all those things that come into our heads, the self-doubt stuff. What advice would you give? What one piece of advice would you give to people?
Oh, I'm not sure if I would say anything different than I've already said, which is just go do it. Who else is going to? Who else could tell your story and share what it is you have to share other than you? There's nobody who's going to do it for you. Mm. And again, we no longer live in a world where someone's going to say whether it's worthy or not. Get it out there. Either do it completely on your own and again, Kindle Direct Publishing is the best way to do that if you want some help. And I even offer anybody I talk to who is exploring, and I have this conversation, you need to write it. Here's some suggestions how to do it. Here are your options for getting published. I tell them all the same thing. Consider me a resource. We've connected. Whether you choose to work with me or working with me is the right avenue or not, I am now a resource for you. So stay in touch, communicate with me. And I offer that to any of your listeners as well. If you have questions, I feel much more passionate about inspiring and encouraging people to write their book and move forward and get it out there than I am about making sure that business comes my way. If it does, wonderful. If not, that's okay, because I am in a place of joy to do this for people. And I love throwing ideas out for people too. I've said this time and time again. I'm like, oh my God, here's an idea I have for a cover. Here's an idea I have for a name for your book. And P.S., my ego is not engaged in this process. I don't want you to think, oh, that sounds good, and you don't really like it. And anybody that I'm designing a cover for, if you hire somebody to do your cover, which you could, they'll typically tell you, you'll get 3 revisions for this price. And they have to structure it. They're a structured business. I say, I will not stop until you are in love with your cover. I want that moment. And it happens every single time. And they'll say, oh my God, I love it. I'm like, that's what I was waiting for.
Yeah.
Now we're done.
Yeah. Right.
Now we're done. So
best way for people to get in touch with you?
KerylPesce.com.
Keryl.
Or you can search Little Pink Press, because that'll take you to if you don't know how to spell my name, that's easier to do, is to search for Little Pink Press.
Yeah. So,
and there's ways to contact me there.
Yeah, we'll put it up here, Little Pink Press. Keryl Pesce, thank you so much for enlightening us and showing us that there are alternatives to being able to maybe get away from the whole process of trying to publish a book that people
don't let that stop you. Don't let that
about.
Fear of rejection or the fear of the unknown stop you. You'll figure it out, or I'll help you figure it out. Just go do it.
Yeah, you're there as a resource. You're a great friend, my friend.
Oh, likewise, Charlie.
Great seeing you. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, my pleasure.
Anyway, that will do it for this edition of the Just Sayin podcast. Make sure that you never miss an episode of the Just Sayin podcast with Charlie Cornacchio by subscribing, or you could also find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any podcast platform that you get your podcasts from, or on YouTube and Facebook for the video version of the podcast. Make sure to download or order my book, How I Met My Mother and the 4 Brothers I Never Knew I Had. And you can get that through Barnes & Noble or wherever you download your books. That will do it for this edition. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and be kind. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Just Sayin podcast.